everyone. My name is Maggie Luckadoo. I am the Marketing Communications Manager at Rise Against Hunger. I am based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I've been with the organization for about 4 years. I am very excited to be joined by one of our partners today, Nancy Letteri. Nancy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, thanks, Maggie. I'm so delighted to be here, particularly speaking in partnership with Rise Against Hunger. So I work for an organization called Children of Vietnam. I am their executive director, and we focus primarily on lifting children from poverty in central Vietnam, Da Nang, Quang Nam, and Quang Ngai. And I've been with Children of Vietnam for 15 years, if I include my volunteer experience with them. It's been
Wonderful.
a long.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. We're so happy to have you join us for this special live event today and talking about the longstanding partnership between our organizations. I actually had the privilege of traveling with Nancy in Vietnam in 2017 and seeing the impact of the work firsthand. So this is really exciting for me, especially. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about Children of Vietnam, when the organization was founded, and the types of work you're doing in Vietnam right now?
Okay, great. I'd love to. Children of Vietnam was founded in 1998 by two people, an American and a Vietnamese. Ben Wilson was doing some work in the early 1990s. He's an engineer and he was in charge of building a factory. And he met our current country director, Lung Thi Huong. They struck up a great friendship. They had similar passion about helping the children that they saw, and one thing led to another. And when Ben retired to go back to the United States, they decided to start Children of Vietnam. So this was Ben's second career, and Huong then became the first employee of Children of Vietnam, and of course now she's our country director and manages all of our programming. It's a nice, exciting partnership and illustrative of a little bit of the paths, history of Vietnam and the U.S., having come from being enemies at one time and now forging a wonderful partnership into the future. And our focus, again, as I said earlier, was trying to alleviate poverty for children. It's a pretty complex issue. Children don't have control of their environment. Poverty in general is multidimensional. You just don't give a child a bike and think that they're going to get to school and have a wonderful life. There's many more layers on that. So we look at targeting very specific vulnerable populations and then overlaying that with multiple services at one time. So with the Rise Against Hunger program, where we have a school distribution program, a school feeding program, we distribute roughly 10,000 plus meals every year, or two meals to the 10,000 plus children. And those are school lunches. The children are going to, we call it kindergarten, but really it's preschool, years 3 to 5. And they get this very nutritious meal every day, hot, warm, and they love it. And you could see if you go there, my God, sometimes these kids eat 3 bowls. Yeah. Who would know their stomach would be that large? They're so little, but they do. And it actually increases attendance. So parents know they'll get a good meal with that. So that's a pretty exciting program for us. Other areas are with children with disabilities, where we layer multiple programs, multiple services for not just health and nutrition, but also school and therapies and home improvements. We have another program for children who live in single parent households. And in that, we focus on the single moms, so that the single moms have better skills to run their own small businesses and better social connections to build resiliency and self-confidence. And the last thing, we focus also on definitely education for children up in the mountains, ethnic minority children, and children down in the lowlands, focusing on providing after-school tutoring, university scholarships, and we even build kindergartens and community-wide water filter systems up in the mountains. So we do quite a bit.
Yes, it's amazing the breadth of the programming that you're doing. It sounds like it's a really holistic approach to serving the populations there. So that's exciting to hear. Since we have been partners, Rise Against Hunger has distributed more than 11.6 million meals to children of Vietnam. And then on the ground in the country, your team actually distributes those meals to the schools and other places that you serve. You mentioned a little bit about the school feeding program, but in your time with the organization, can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the long-term effects that you've seen of the meals?
Well, the long-term effects, as I said earlier, it's keeping the kids coming to school where they'll get a good primary education and be able to compete with their peers when they get into first and second grade. That's very important. And they're going to have a stronger body. You know, if you're not hungry, you're playing, you're growing, you're developing, you're learning how to count, all the things that little children need to do. So we think we're keeping kids in school and we're keeping them healthy long term, and that's pretty exciting. The other exciting part of this is really just the structure of the feeding program in general. Let me explain what I mean by that. So Rise Against Hunger facilitates all these volunteers and brings food together. And that food, Children of Vietnam pays for the shipping, and we do the warehousing and we monitor what's going on. But then we have partners in country who actually on their own, with their own staff and their own costs for trucking, deliver all this food to 70, 80, 100 schools across the countryside. So this is a partnership that spans across the globe to make sure our 10,000 kids have appropriate nutrition. So the impact is phenomenal for the children, and the effort behind it is equally phenomenal.
It is really amazing to think about that journey from the hands of our volunteers at the meal packaging event and all the different steps that those meals then take to reach that child in a kindergarten in Vietnam. It really is, it's a really big picture project to get the meals from point A to point B, and so many people have to work together, and that's really inspiring to think about.
It's inspiring when you think about it. It's one of the reasons why I love this program so much. Plus, I love to watch kids eat. Who doesn't?
I know. I definitely won't ever forget visiting the kindergartens and just seeing the excitement at lunchtime when they all ran out of the classrooms to eat lunch, and definitely not something I'll ever forget. It's a very joyful moment for sure.
It is. Yeah. It's a great adventure to watch them.
Yes. You alluded to this a little bit earlier, but I'm really excited to also talk about the Empowerment Through Enterprise project. We worked together, our organizations, in 2017 to launch this project with a goal of increasing incomes and supporting nutrition for single mothers and their children. I know the project wrapped up late last year, but it provided financial literacy and business development training. Can you tell us a little bit more about that project and what the outcomes were?
Yeah, that was a really exciting project, and we've actually incorporated everything we've learned in that project into a broader program called Empowering Foundations for Women and Their Children. But the Empowerment Through Enterprise was critical in giving us experience in doing micro enterprise business training. And what do these women need to learn, and how do they learn, and how do we teach them so that they can leverage their new skills and build their small businesses? And they're small businesses. We're talking corn or sugarcane juicers where they sell sugarcane drinks, or maybe selling the traditional banh mi, which is a Vietnamese sandwich on the roadside. Sometimes it's raising chickens or ducks, or could be a seamstress, or even a daycare, a little tiny daycare center, depending on what her skills and desires are. So we really learned a lot. We think the women learned a lot. Ultimately, we did measure what their income increase was, and we found a 7% increase in their revenues, which is pretty big when you're talking, if you have little amount to begin with. 7% is a lot. The other item that we found out, and we were quite surprised about because we were not planning on measuring it, but we learned that the women mostly valued their ability to meet each other and share their experiences and share their skills and build it. What it ultimately did was build their confidence and resiliency, so that if they encounter a problem in the future, they're not going to be in our program forever. So they have a network in which to depend on. And one woman said, I remember this, she said, I know if my business doesn't do well, that's okay, because I'm just going to pick myself up and I'm going to keep on getting it. Obviously said it in Vietnamese, but that was the essence. And I thought that's what resiliency is all about. And that's what this program has been able to provide for her, in addition to all the skills. So something we didn't expect would happen happened. And we're incorporating that now into our whole program.
That's great. And I love that was, not a goal initially, but it is so important to build that community and have that sort of mentorship among peers. And that's exciting to hear that you're continuing efforts like that. And it sounds like it'll have an impact for years and years to come. So
I think it will. And I would also like to say, this is sort of an aside to the actual program and its input. But the partnership between Rise Against Hunger and Children of Vietnam has been phenomenal, because the other impact of that program is that Rise Against Hunger was willing to provide expertise and time and commitment, traveling to our organization all the way in Da Nang several times, providing training opportunities for our staff to learn how program design works and how to monitor it, and then ultimately how to learn from what we've done. And so that partnership not only provided for the women beneficiaries, we had 200 women beneficiaries and their 400 children, but it also built the capacity so that our staff can go forth and help more women and do a better job at it, so that the women's improvement is even greater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what we learn every single day in this area of work is that collaboration is really the number one way to make any of this happen. And we know we wouldn't be able to do it without partners like you and our volunteers as well. So I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, it was a big part. It was wonderful. And we're just very, very pleased and hope our partnership can keep on going.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Nancy. It's been so great to hear about the impact that Rise Against Hunger and Children of Vietnam have been able to have in Vietnam in many different ways. So we've really enjoyed having you here, and I know our audience has as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm delighted to share. So we're just very grateful to Rise Against Hunger and all of the supporters of Rise Against Hunger. Thank you.
Thank you. And to our audience, if you're interested in learning more about our partnership and reading some of the stories of the women and the children who have benefited, please visit riseagainsthunger.org/blog. Thank you so much for tuning in.